Hello, everybody. My name is Skip, and this is the Top 5 Weekly. And I have some very special guests. We got bobblehead man over there, Mr. Steven. Since you're bobbling, you can tell them who you are. Bobble.
What's up, guys? I'm Stephen Billings, here again to talk movies. MCU, baby!
Yeah, we are talking about the MCU this week. I've been really looking forward to this week's episode, and because of the posters behind me, Doctor Strange comes out this week or came out this week, and so I got my special panel here to talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And Billy, tell them who you are.
Oh, thanks for saying my name. No, but hi, I'm Billy Pollan. I'm actually a DC guy, but I do love the MCU. Like, I have every film, even though what I'm wearing very much contradicts the MCU. Hey, I like that movie, and I will fight to the death on that. But I love the MCU so much, and I'm very excited.
The Blu-ray cut of Dawn of Justice is a great film in my opinion, and I have that same Blu-ray set that Steven has. I got to get the second one. I think it's in like a globe, Steven. The globe from Guardians of the Galaxy. So I got to get that second set.
The Power Stone.
I need to.
I do.
Stone.
You got the second set already? You dog. I got to get that set. All right, and then we got Andrew. Introduce yourself, Andrew.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew, back again, this time to talk MCU films. Like Billy, I'm a diehard DC Comics fan, but I like talking Marvel too, so I can go either way.
You know, I'm the same way. I mean, you know, I love this whole thing. Sometimes you hear it on some of the other podcasts. They say, "Oh, people are DC fans or they're Marvel fans," and then some of the hosts will say, "No, we're fans of all of it. We want it all to be good." Well, that's me. I'm a fan of both. I like all the films. I want them all to be good. I don't want them to be crappy. And we're going to disclude the crappy ones on this top 5 week. We're going to talk about the great ones. And there's enough great ones here where I'm hoping none of you guys will put one of the garbage ones in your top 5. I might not have to have you on the show ever again. And between numbers 4 and 3, we're all going to do our Doctor Strange review, except for Billy, because Billy, unfortunately, has not watched Doctor Strange.
I do have the facial hair, so.
But we're not going to do spoilers. We're not going to do spoilers, Billy. We won't spoil the movie for you. So with that, we always start with the man on the left, and the man on the left to me is Andrew. So, Andrew, let's get started. What is your number 5 film in your Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Number 5, I'm going to go back to the beginning with the first Iron Man film. Many consider it the best of the standalone Marvel films. I'm putting it at my number 5 because without the success of this film, we don't really get many of the others. Well, I think we get them, but they're not as well received, probably. So I'm going to go with the first one, directed by Jon Favreau, came out 2008. I remember seeing this film, my goodness, almost, was it 8 years ago now? And I remember being really, really thoroughly entertained and impressed, and I still think it holds up today. Granted, we're in a post-Avengers world, so watching films just centered around one character is kind of foreign to us now. But I'll say this, Robert Downey Jr. is great as Tony Stark. He's probably going to keep playing Tony Stark, maybe forever, for all we know. But I like this. I'm glad to see that he was able to kind of have a career resurgence with this character.
No, I respect that so much, Andrew, that you put Iron Man on your list. I consider that one of the great Marvel Cinematic Universe films. All right, Billy, what's your number 5?
This is a tough one because there actually are some. I mean, thanks to Marvel's years of making films, we have a lot to choose from. But I'm actually going to go with one that I find underrated, and it's the first Thor film. And I'm picking that because Thor is very, very tough character to get down. I mean, he's an Asgardian. He's essentially a demigod or god, and he has a ridiculous helmet, stupid long blonde hair, and a magic hammer that he just swings around and it helps him fly. But you get a Shakespearean director, Kenneth Branagh, and bring in that drama, a great performance by not only Chris Hemsworth, but Tom Hiddleston as Loki, and throw in the whole father angle, which, let's face it, Odin's a bit of a dick. It's all around. It's a very good film, and it helped us whet our appetites for Doctor Strange, because it's not exactly magic, but it's kind of hinting at that.
No, I mean, I agree. I mean, Thor, the first Thor is really a fun movie, and like you said, you're introduced to the best. I would say in 14 films, there still hasn't been a villain as good as Tom Hiddleston as Loki. So you got the best villain, and you got one of the best films. All right, Steven, what is your number 5?
All right. Also, I'm going to go with, to me, an underrated one. I don't hear a lot of people say that they actually even like this movie, but maybe they do. Maybe I'm the only one, and that's the Captain America: The First Avenger. To me, part of why I really love this one is because it's the only period film. Like, that's makes it stand apart. There's no other Marvel film that's a period film. That, to me, and I've always loved the Captain America origin story. When they first started the MCU, it was the one I was most looking forward to, because I didn't know Iron Man yet. When I knew that they were going to make these movies, I was like, I know Captain America, and I love his origin story. And they did it. It was awesome. And, you get characters like Agent Carter, who ended up getting her spinoff series that people love. There's a lot of good stuff that came out of Captain America, The First Avenger, and I think it's kind of underappreciated. Joe Johnston directed it. He's the guy that did Jumanji. He's did a lot of great films. And it has this certain amount of optimism, too, that, like the DC is lacking, kind of is something that set the way for Marvel in the future. And also Stanley Tucci. Another great actor, played a great character in that movie. And to me, Red Skull is actually an underrated villain. Even though he might not have gotten enough time in the movie, he's still out there somewhere again. But I always really love, because I rewatched most of these before this, and I always really love Captain America: The First Avenger.
No, I have to agree with you. Captain America: The First Avenger is a very underrated. Same thing goes for Thor. I mean, I think there are probably 10 good to great films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. 10, and I believe Thor and Captain America: The First Avenger are among those 10. And Hugo Weaving, I just want to see him pop up in Infinity War somehow, that Thanos saved him, and Hugo Weaving gets to come back and reprise. I could have swore Robert Redford was going to pull off his mask and it was going to be the Red Skull in the Winter Soldier, but they didn't go that route. But I'm going to go. Okay, it's my turn now. I'm going to go with my number 5. I'll tell you what. I had 4 solid, and I've been debating and I've been asking people all week, is this movie better than that movie, and so on. And it came down to 2 movies for me, and I guess because it's fresh in my mind, I decided to go with Doctor Strange as my number 5.
Thought we were keeping it off the list,
yeah,
buddy.
Dan, breaking the rules.
All right. So you don't want me to use Doctor Strange as my number 5? I forgot we even talked about that. I'll go with Ant-Man as my number 5. I honestly don't even remember, Steven, talking about that. All right, I'm going to go with Ant-Man as my number 5, since it was my number 6 anyway. Paul Rudd, I mean, what a great guy to bring into the Marvel Cinematic. The first really comedic actor, guy who cut his chops in comedies and romantic comedies and that sort of thing. And we had the problem with Edgar Wright, with the director, getting booted off because his vision didn't match with Kevin Feige's, and then we got Peyton Reed, and of course a lot of what Edgar Wright had in his script was in there. A lot of the kind of quirky stuff, especially towards the end of Ant-Man, was in there, and that's what was kind of fun and out there about Ant-Man. The villain, obviously, Corey Stoll as Yellow Jacket, not one of the better villains, but I'll tell you what, I like the subplot stuff with Hank Pym, Michael Douglas, and Evangeline Lilly as Janet Van Dyne. They added to the whole mythos of what we're going to get down the road. I think we're going to get some of that stuff that's going to match into some of these other movies. And obviously, the success of Ant-Man has spawned a sequel. It's going to be Ant-Man and the Wasp, and we're going to see more of Janet Van Dyne, Evangeline Lilly's character. But the comedy and the quirkiness, even, it was like a robbery kind of movie where they're like robbing stuff. What's it called? What are those called again? Heist movie. A heist movie. That's it. And yeah, Michael Pena has once again some more comedy relief. So I really liked Ant-Man, and I thought that all the elements that were in Ant-Man added up to one of the better MCU films. And thinking about it, when they first started, they didn't know Ant-Man was going to be part of the MCU. It was just going to be a movie, an Ant-Man movie. Then they kind of configured it to fit into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I think is good for us all out there. All right, number 4. Andrew, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is Guardians of the Galaxy. It is probably, for me, the most rewatchable of all of the MCU films because of how fun it is. It is such a great, fun, space operatic film with great visual effects. I mean, Chris Pratt as Star-Lord is a star-making role for him, literally. And also just a great cast. Dave Bautista, all the other characters. I mean, Rocket Raccoon. Who would have thought a talking raccoon would be an iconic character? A walking, talking tree is a beloved character. I mean, James Gunn did a wonderful job with this film, really giving us something completely different from all the other MCU films. I mean, it takes place in space. It doesn't take place on Earth. We get a lot of cosmic visuals, a lot of cosmic themes. It's really a great film in the MCU.
I definitely I can concur with you there, Andrew. We might hear more of that in the rest of the panel, I have a feeling. Billy, what's your number 4?
I was debating because I don't know how I feel sometimes about this, but I'm going to go Captain America Civil War. Now, yeah, don't kill me for putting it so low on here. I don't like it as much as everyone else, but I still really like it. And I will totally agree that the airport scene is like one of their best scenes, not only just in the MCU, just in superhero movies in general. I mean, you can't say – it's also a very well-crafted film. I had problems with the ending, but, I understand why they did certain things. And I thought that it was the Avengers sequel that we deserved. I mean, Ultron, for me, it just gets worse every time. Like, it does its job, but this is the Avengers sequel I wanted, and yeah, it really delivered.
All right, Steve, you got the chug of whatever there is what you were drinking right there. What is your number 4?
Well, I work for Pepsi, so of course it's a Mountain Dew. So I can't drink anything else, or they'll fire me. They're watching always. But my number 4 is one Andrew talked about already, and that is where it all started. Downey has continued to be the leader of the MCU, really just pulling to being the through line through all these movies in some way. And his charisma and his ability to just consume a character, become that character has just really been infectious beyond the movies. And this movie is just, it might not have the strongest villain, even though it is Jeff Bridges and he's awesome. And he's bald and he's got a beard. He's cool. But the movie gives us one of the only relationships that's believable, which is between him and Pepper. So one of the only believable ones. There's maybe like Agent Carter and Captain America. That's about it. Like most of the romantic relationships in the MCU suck pretty bad. But I think that the Pepper and the Tony Stark relationship actually seems believable. The action still holds up. The effects still hold up. I actually am in maybe the rare that I like Terrence Howard as War Machine more than I like Don Cheadle. I wish we would have got more from him, but but Iron Man still awesome.
Yeah, that's what happens when you ask for more money in the MCU and you're not Robert Downey Jr. They're saying hit the bricks, buddy. Edward Norton, Terrence Howard, both of those guys acted like they were bigger than the whole of the deal, and they said hit the bricks. Disney said hit the bricks. So that's what happens to them. I'm going to go with Captain America: Winter Soldier as my number 4. I know a lot of folks like this movie, and I love it. I mean, I am a huge fan of this movie because I love the 70s kind of spy genre, and they go out and get Robert Redford. So the Three Days of the Condor is one of the greatest movies of like that kind of spy genre and whatnot, like the government's coming down on you. And this has such a feel of 3 Days of the Condor. And you had Black Widow and Captain America played by Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson going into like a bunker, and we had I can't think of the guy's name, guys. Somebody help me.
Zola.
Say that again.
Arnim Zola. You're talking about the beer guy, right?
Yeah, he was the talking. I'm like, that was such a cool, cameo to get him in the film. To go back and get that, and then we had the introduction of Anthony Mackie as Falcon, which is on your left. On that whole scene where he's running and is on your left, that was like a funny scene. And then there was a great. I think there was a great post-credit scene as well for Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver with one of the guys that are going to show up in Ultron. So we had a lot of really cool stuff if you like that kind of genre of the winter. Then some of the great special effects. I mean, when the hover carriers were exploding and crashing into Washington, D.C., I mean, those effects were just amazing. I mean, and then, of course, we have the Winter Soldier, played by Sebastian Stan for the first time. We get to see him, and he held his own. He just was a badass in that film. And you get to see him, obviously, in future films. But I really enjoyed Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I just like 3 more films other than that one. All right, so, like I said, non-spoilers. Andrew, what is your review? Give us your review of Doctor Strange.
Okay, I will give you my brief review. I don't want to be here all night. I'll say this. It is visually one of the most complex and unique of all of the MCU films. Amazing visuals in the film. And I'll say this also, fantastic acting. I think we have one of the best ensemble casts in terms of caliber of acting in all of the MCU. I mean, Benedict Cumberbatch, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Tilda Swinton, just phenomenal acting. And Mads Mikkelsen, who I'm a huge fan of, and he plays villains really, really well throughout his career. I'll say this, speaking of Mads Mikkelsen, I'll say this, one of the negative aspects of the film, I will say, is the MCU has a penchant for not really developing or creating very strong villains, and that seems to be the case in this film as well. But overall, I have to say I did really enjoy the film. It's very entertaining. It is very much an origin film, so there's a lot of origin-type things when it comes to the plot, but I'm very curious to see where they go with the Doctor Strange character, because he is very unique in the MCU and also a very powerful character, probably the most powerful character we've seen in the MCU, maybe other than Scarlet Witch.
Yeah, great job there. All right, Steven, see if you can expound on what.
Well, basically, I'm kind of there with Andrew and a lot of the points. Villain has kind of been a other than Loki, we really haven't had any real strong villains, and once again, we're kind of on par there with most of the villains, where they're not really developed very well. The motivations are murky, but Mads Mikkelsen's character had a good presence, and still was formidable in the movie. And like he said, the visuals in this film are just I don't know who thought of some of the stuff I saw in this movie. There's some trippy shit in this movie, and it's enjoyable though. It's you're like, there was times in the movie where, like, especially when he first gets thrown through all the interdimensional states, I was just like, what the hell is going on? And amazing. Like when a movie can make you yell out loud, it's like it's doing something. But yeah, the character of Doctor Strange is going to be a very interesting character to put up against all these other characters we've already established, along with, like, Spider-Man's going to do the same thing. I think that's one thing they're trying to do, is they're trying to cement some new characters that are really going to clash and bring a new aspect to the story at large. Because, also Black Panther, vastly different type of character than what we've seen. But Doctor Strange is just really setting up this whole new thing. And I think also, without spoiling anything, I think we're setting up for maybe the next good villain in the future. Possibly. We'll see where it goes. But I think we have a possibility of maybe villain in the future if it's set up right. But I really loved it. Go check it out. Yeah.
Yeah, we got a villain coming up in Infinity War Part 1 and Part 2 that I think will be the best villain in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, all said and done. I feel Thanos will be the best villain when it's all said and done. We'll all be hands down, he's the best. That's my opinion. Now, I want to go expound on a little bit about what Andrew and Steven said. The cast. You have Chiwetel Ejiofor as Mordo, Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One, Rachel McAdams. Is it Stephanie? Was her name Stephanie?
Christine. Okay.
Benedict Wong as Wong. Mads Mikkelsen is Cassius. I think the supporting cast in this film probably rivals the supporting cast in any of the Marvel Cinematic Universe films to date. You have Oscar winners and Oscar-nominated people and people that probably should have already won an Oscar by now. That's how good some of these people are in this film. You got some of the arguably probably the best cast in a superhero movie. In the last 15 years. Maybe the original cast of the X-Men that first time, or that first go around, is probably the best cast. But this is probably arguably the best cast in a superhero movie. I can't think of a better cast than this. This is weak spots. There's always like weak spots, Of course, Avengers have got all the Avengers. I don't know if you call it. It's a combination of all of them. So I don't know if you call that the best cast. But in these origin movies, they always find a new way to make it entertaining. And if you know the origin of Doctor Strange, you know what happens to Stephen Strange in the film. But they always keep the origins entertaining, and all these characters have different origins. That's what is kind of different about each of the films. And what Steven said is, you still have Black Panther. That's going to be a completely different character. Spider-Man's going to be a John Hughes film from what they're saying. So that's going to be kind of completely different. So Marvel keeps upping the bar and keeps things interesting, not resting on its laurels, not doing the same thing over and over again. And each one of the movies is great in its own way. Very few have, when they made a couple bad movies, they decided we aren't going to make any more bad movies. We're going to put every little detail. We're going to make sure that everything that we do, and they did it with Doctor Strange because the special effects are some of the best in 3D I've ever seen in a film. I mean, obviously you hear the whole, it's like Inception. It's like this. It takes Inception to the next level. And that's what's great about Doctor Strange. And I haven't given anything away, Billy. You're going to absolutely love this film. You know, I just can't say enough. And like Steven said, I'm really looking forward to seeing what Cumberbatch is going to have to do in some of these other films. Wouldn't it be great to see like him standing in his Sanctum Sanctorum and have the Silver Surfer fall through, and then that starts off the Infinity War? If Marvel somehow can get that,
That's a rights problem.
Yeah.
Hold on, one at a time. One at a time. What'd you say, Andrew?
I would say that may be a rights problem, but
Well, no, I mean, see,
could
they have
happen.
to get the Fantastic Four back. Maybe they haven't got the FF back yet, but maybe they will by the time that film. Remember how long it took them to get Spider-Man back, and you didn't know there was 2 scripts. You did not know if Spider-Man was going to be in Captain America: Civil War, but everybody wanted him in Captain America: Civil War. Now, what were you saying, Steven? What did you say?
What?
About
I was
when
saying the same thing as him. It's just rights. If they get the rights, then yes. But,
well, and so
I'd like to see Fantastic Four, in there.
oh, of course we would. I think everybody would. And Marvel's going to do the Fantastic Four right. And I still feel those 2020 films, one of them is going to be a Fantastic Four film. I just have a strong feeling about those 20. They have 3 films in 2020 that have not been announced. I have a feeling one of them's going to be the Fantastic Four. That's just my opinion. But tell me that wouldn't be awesome for Infinity War to start with Silver Surfer crashing through the Sanctum Sanctorum, though.
It wouldn't be awesome.
I love you, Steve. You're awesome. You're awesome, Steven. All right. Andrew, we're going to go back to you. What is your number 3 Marvel Cinematic Universe favorite? Or best?
My number 3 is Captain America: Civil War. I know it's probably going to be number 1 on someone's list somewhere, maybe here, who knows. But I'll say this. It was, like Billy said, a much more worthy sequel to the Avengers than I would say Age of Ultron was. Age of Ultron, like Billy said, does have some replayability problems. I will definitely say this plays a lot more like Avengers 2.5, but while still also being a Captain America film, specifically when it comes to his relationship with the Winter Soldier, Bucky Barnes, which is a huge part of the plot. And I'll have to say, like everybody has said and will say, that airport scene is amazing. It is unprecedented having that many characters on screen fighting at the same time. Also, one of the big issues I have with that scene is that as awesome as it is, you kind of have to have in the back of your head that these characters really aren't trying to kill one another. At least, and I think they actually readily acknowledge it in the battle, where Scarlet Witch pretty much says you're pulling your punches. People aren't fighting as much as they would initially fight in a real kind of life and death battle. I thought that seriousness came later on in the film, specifically in the last climactic battle or climactic fight. I do have my problems with the film in general, specifically when it comes to the villain, and his plan is really kind of contrived in the sense that everything really needs to play out accordingly for it to work. But other than that, I'll say it is a very, very good film. And it's worthy of all the praise that it gets. And the Russo brothers are an awesome filmmaking duo. And I'm really glad that they are taking the reins from Joss Whedon and leading the MCU forward for however long it goes for. So that's all I have to say.
All right, Billy, what is your number 3?
Okay. As much as it pains me, this is one that I can't not have on the list, and it's one that we have talked about the most, and it's Iron Man. The first Iron Man film, Robert Downey Jr. was tailor-made for that role because he, in reality, he really is Tony Stark, except he just had to grow the facial hair, but he pulled it off. And I still feel like they should have done the Demon in the Bottle story later on. But, as an origin story, as a way to start off the MCU, it's a great film. And while, also, I had no idea that this was going to be like a universe. I didn't even stay for the post-credit scene because I was young and I didn't know Marvel had post-credit scenes. But once I did watch it, I'm like, that's Samuel L. Jackson with an eye patch. And then he's like, oh, I'm here to talk to you about the Avengers. So I immediately did my homework, and I'm like, they're doing that. Wow. But it works as a standalone film as well. You don't need to see any of the other Marvel films at all, and you could just watch it on its own. It can be its own film, and you will still like it.
No, I don't have Iron Man on my top 5. I will say that right now. But I respect all you guys for having Iron Man, because I feel like, it's easily in the top 6 or 7 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And obviously, in your opinions, it's in the top 5. So, I just love the film. When I first saw that trailer coming out of Comic-Con that year, I said, I'm kind of talking weird here, but I said to myself, oh my God, this is going to be great. This movie is going to be great. This is going to be the perfect kickoff to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it was. We won't talk about the other Iron Mans. All right. What is your number 3?
My number 3 is one that just when it was coming out, nobody knew anything about it, and I didn't know nothing about it, but it looked fun, and James Gunn was directing it, and I knew it had to be fun, and that is Guardians of the Galaxy. Chris Pratt shot him up into stardom. Zoe Saldana as Gamora. You got Drax the Destroyer played by Batista, which is a guy that admits out loud that he's not a good actor. But James Gunn found a way to make it work because they used his deadpan to really work well, which is the character. It's something about, and once again, it's another thing that Marvel's done is they've found a way to keep it interesting, and they've opera for us to enjoy. And from what I know about what they're going to do with the second movie, it's going to be very much not really linked with anything that's going on crazy in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but and that's part of why I like it. Even the first Guardians is not got so much going on from the rest of what's going on to the other movies. It helps take a little bit of a breather, get out into the cosmic world, and have some zany fun because James Gunn, and he does some crazy shit. And I want to see more crazy shit in the sequel, so bring it on.
Yeah, I have a feeling you might hear more about Guardians of the Galaxy before this is all over with.
What are you trying to say, Dan?
I think it's a popular film in a lot of folks' top 5, so you might see it. Might hear somebody talk about it before this is all over with. My number 3 is the first Avengers. The culmination of the first phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You had your Iron Man, you had your Hulks, you had your Thors, and you had your Captain America, and they all came together to fight Loki in the Avengers. This is the first time we had all these iconic Marvel characters on screen together, combined, and I'll tell you what, it was a huge success in my opinion. Joss Whedon captured the nature of what the comic books are in this film. He brought the comic books to life in the film. You had the comedy, you had the shtick sometimes, you had the action, you had the camaraderie, and you had a villain that you could do a lot of stuff with this villain. And so it was great to have a bunch of nameless aliens where they could beat them up and do all kinds of crazy stuff. And the special effects for the time were really, really, really good. Of course, they're always upping the ante when it comes to the special effects. Obviously, with Doctor Strange, it's breathtaking. But the special effects in Avengers was phenomenal for the time. And it made you say to yourself, I cannot wait for what they have coming down the pipe. And of course, we got phase 2, and they upped the ante in phase 2 with the Guardians and some of these other characters. So I absolutely love the Avengers. It's a phenomenal film. I put it at number 3 on my Marvel Cinematic Universe list. I have a sneaking suspicion we might hear some more talk about the Avengers. Andrew, go ahead with your number 2.
Oh, Dan, you're good. You're good. You should be a fortune teller because my number 2 is the Avengers. Like like Dan was saying, it is a film that takes all of the parts of the first phase and put them into one film. And this film is probably even more important to the overall success of the MCU than Iron Man was, because their big experiment was make all these individual films and then put all these characters together in one film. And if this film doesn't work, the whole MCU really is a big, expensive failure. But luckily, they got Joss Whedon, who is a great filmmaker. He's a big comic book fan. He was able to take all of the different elements of these characters and seamlessly weave them together in one film. He was able to balance everything very, very well. Specifically when it came to the action sequences, he was able to really show us entirety of the action sequence by moving from place to place in a very seamless way. So it was really great to see such great filmmaking in a giant budget superhero film. And it's really set the tone for the rest of the MCU. It took a little while afterwards for, I think, the MCU to get going again, to really find its identity, but I think it's getting there now.
Yeah, you added some really good points there, Andrew. All right, Billy, what is your number 2?
Sorry, I was looking. That was my mom. My number 2, I'm just going to spoil this, and Guardians is not on my list. It really pains me because I love James Gunn. Like, I'm a huge fan of Trauma and everything he does, and he's a St. Louis representative, St. Louis native, and that's where I'm from. But my number 2 is got to be Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This is my favorite of the Cap trilogy, and the reason why it is my number 2 is it's the most unique, personally, for me, of the MCU films, because it is a political thriller, and the writing is some of the best writing I've seen from a comic book film. Like Anthony Mackie's Falcon, I didn't know how that would work, and he's perfect for the role. The villain really wasn't that much, and you got such a great actor in Robert Redford, probably my favorite actor of all time. And he did a fine job as Pierce, but it's also made me care about a guy who looks like a caveman and has a metal arm. Made me care about Sebastian Stan. I mean, later in Civil War, he became a plot device, but still, I cared for that plot device. And really, Chris Evans has to sell it, and he's got a lot of charisma. It's magic. It really is something that a lot of people can watch, and it's not, the stakes don't feel like, oh, it's the end of the world, even though it says it's the end of the world. It doesn't feel like that. It just feels like a very personal story, and the more simple the story, the better.
Yeah, you had some good points to what I said, Billy. Steven, what's your number 2?
Well, I'm just going to keep beating that drum. Captain America: Winter Soldier. It's just it's the Empire Strikes Back. It's the Dark Knight of the trilogy. It's the darkest hour. It's when S.H.I.E.L.D. finally got, we found out S.H.I.E.L.D. is actually Hydra. It's something that really changed the MCU and had to put it in a different direction. And like you said, the stakes. Nick Fury wasn't safe. Nobody was safe. And really great action directing in this film. I think it's even better than Civil War, even though it's got one of the best action scenes. I think some of the fighting scenes in Winter Soldier are better, especially the beginning when he parachutes onto the ship and just starts just running and doing a parkour fight thing and just killing everybody. Well, not killing everybody, but you know what I mean. Knocking people off the ship. Just it's and then he has a fight with somebody that's an actual fighter, doesn't he? At the beginning.
Yeah, George St. Pierre.
Yeah, that was awesome.
He played Batshot.
Yeah, and it's a movie that like you said it's a very unique movie. It's a political thriller. Also obviously Robert Redford had done one of them himself back in the day. All the President's Men. Very, very much a kind of a familiar thing. I think that's probably part of the reason they decided to cast him, because it would have kind of shown a little bit of foreshadowing there. But it's just a great movie. It's not just a great comic book movie, but a great film in general.
Yeah, I have to echo what all you guys have said so far. I do love Captain America: Civil War, but I just got a couple films that I like better than that. 3 films, in fact. All right, my number 2 is Guardians of the Galaxy. I'll tell you what. Going back to this whole thing that Marvel is doing, Ant-Man's a heist film. Spider-Man's going to be a John Hughes film. Captain America is a spy thriller. Guardians is basically the Star Wars, a space opera. And they went with this, and it succeeded. All these different characters came together. A walking, talking tree, a walking, talking raccoon, a green girl, a big, bulking, hulking type of guy that, you don't know what the heck he was going to say. They all came together, and what Andrew said, the glue is Chris Pratt. Or somebody said the glue was Chris Pratt. I can't remember who said the glue. But Chris Pratt makes all these guys make sense, makes the story make sense, and makes the entire movie entertaining. You have people like Glenn Close and John C. Reilly. I mean, they're in a Marvel movie as supporting characters, and you're getting people like you said, Robert Redford in Captain America, The Winter Soldier. You're getting Sir Anthony Hopkins in Thor. You're getting Oscar winners and Oscar-nominated folks like Tilda Swinton. There's a reason. The writing is great. The only way Guardians of the Galaxy can succeed is a guy like James Gunn who puts together these quirky kinds of movies, these quirky kinds of characters. But the writing, Marvel hits it out of the park probably 9 times out of 10 with their scripts. If the scripts don't work, the movies aren't going to work. And Guardians of the Galaxy script was phenomenal. They go into a Sentinel's head is like a spaceport, and they go to Nova Prime, and they have these crazy spaceships that make a shield. Then you have, the Kree. We have the Kree, and they introduced the Kree to this. We have all kinds of crazy space stuff that makes this completely different than all of the other Marvel movies. It's funny. It's action-packed. Once again, the special effects are phenomenal. I mean, I absolutely love the Guardians of the Galaxy, and it was my.
Let's not forget the soundtrack is amazing.
Oh, that's right, the soundtrack. Mixtape Volume 1. I mean, are you kidding me? When you first saw those guys in jail, and the guy puts on the Walkman, and he's got that song on there, it's like, oh man, is this gonna be good? Now, what does it do? It makes you want to hear Mixtape Volume 2, which I'm sure is going to be a bunch of great disco music and 80s kind of cool music. It seems like, the 80s are coming back. I grew up in the 80s, so it's weird to find that the 80s are coming back, but they are coming back in a cool way in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies or different other movies as well. But I love Guardians of the Galaxy. It was my number one until something else trumped it as my number one. So we'll see that when the time comes. All right, I talked about 10 Marvel films I'd say are good to great. I think there's 4 you kind of not that great. So I'm sure that you guys are going to have something on your honorable mentions. So you bring up an honorable mention, Andrew.
I'm gonna go. The first Thor film is an honorable mention for me. What is interesting about that film, I believe Billy said it earlier, is that it was directed by Kenneth Branagh, who, as a lot of people know, comes from a Shakespearean background. I mean, he does these great Shakespearean film adaptations. He did one about Hamlet that's really, really long and great. But he brought a Shakespearean flavor to a Norse god kind of Thor story, where it's about fathers and sons and familial relationships and stuff like that. One of the biggest faults with that film, unfortunately, is the budget is clearly not as high as the other films, where they set it in a very small, rustic, I call it Tiny Town, USA, in New Mexico, because they just look like set pieces. But the story is very, very good. I'll say this also, another honorable mention, the Incredible Hulk film with Edward Norton is actually pretty good. It's much better than the Ang Lee Hulk film from, a decade or so earlier. And Edward Norton was a very good Bruce Banner / Incredible Hulk. I would say the new actor who
Mark Ruffalo.
Mark Ruffalo is probably even better. Who knows if we'll ever get a standalone Hulk film ever again. But those two definitely. I'm trying to think of some other ones. Ant-Man film, surprisingly good. Considering they only had a year really to restart that project and put it together after Edgar Wright left it, is kind of amazing what they were able to accomplish in such a short amount of time, where typically these productions take 2 or more years to actually do.
All right, Billy.
My honorable mentions, of course, I gotta mention Guardians. It barely just missed my list, and I know I see a lot of Steven's but
I didn't do it.
No, I see your face, and you're like, oh man, really? No, but I love that. Another one is the first Captain America film. I actually got to see it with my grandparents, and they they were alive in the 40s, so that's I was going, I'm like, was it really like that? And they're like, actually, yeah. A lot of that stuff, surprisingly, was very accurate. And I'm trying to think what else. Not much in phase 1 and 2 that really, well, for me, that really are great. But
that's good. That's good enough.
Yeah, I think that's good enough.
Yeah, Steven, I'm sure you're going to talk about films we've already talked about, but that's fine. That's
Well,
good.
I was going to say, I don't want to say my honorable mention until because I don't want to give it away.
All right, so you don't want to say your honorable mention until what?
Until I'm about to say what my number 1 is.
All right. Well, all right. We'll let you hold off, and then obviously I got Iron Man, and I mean it was just such a tough decision for me to leave Iron Man off, because I do love Iron Man. It just always sat there at number 6 on my list ever since all these other films kept on coming out, and then some films would drop off my top 5. I'll admit I had Age of Ultron on my top 5 for a while there, and then all of a sudden I said, you know what? This isn't as good as I thought it was, and so that dropped off, but other ones moved into my top 5. So Iron Man always kind of stuck at number 6 on my list, and it's right on the fringes of my favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe films, and it, what you guys said, it kicked off one of the greatest, I think, things in the history of film. A bunch of movies that are connecting with plot, characters, story. We have never had anything resembling this even come close. Star Wars, is probably the closest thing we've got. We got 7 of those films. We're going to have a 8th film, and then next year a 9th film. Star Wars is the only really thing that came close to what Marvel is doing with these films, and they're going to keep expanding with 3 more films next year. We're going to have, by the end of next year, we're going to have 17 Marvel cinematic films. We have Guardians, Thor Ragnarok, and Spider-Man Homecoming. I mean, are you kidding me? We're doing 3 more of these every year up until 2020. Are we living in a dream world? And it was because of Robert Downey Jr., Jon Favreau, Kevin Feige, all these people that came aboard on Iron Man. So, I can't praise that film enough.
We're also getting 3 Netflix series in a year next year.
Yeah. We're getting Punisher. No, Iron Fist, Punisher, and the Defenders next year. And I have a feeling by the end of next year, they're going to announce some other Netflix series. I'll tell you what, I like what Jeremy Renner said this week. Oh, if you had not seen that Hawkeye comic book by Matt Fraction and the other guy, that lends itself to a Netflix series so much, guys. You've got to see that Hawkeye comic. If you've never read the Hawkeye comic that's out, the modern comic that's out right now, it is so good. And you can maybe take some of the S.H.I.E.L.D. characters, like Adrian Palicki, and throw her in there. You know what I mean? You could throw some other characters in there and make for a cool Netflix show for Jeremy Renner. I mean, for a big-time actor like Jeremy Renner to say, I will do a Netflix TV show, he has to have all kinds of respect for what Netflix has been doing with their shows, because that's rare. And it's Sigourney Weaver. Oh, my God. That's crazy. All right. I was distracted by Netflix Marvel shows. Thank you, Steven. We're going to go back to Andrew. You've been very patient, Andrew.
Yes, I have. Before I get into my number 1, another honorable mention is the first Avenger film, as Steven mentioned before. It's set in World War II, which is one of my favorite time periods. Also gave me one of our favorite kind of side characters or addition, that is Haley Atwell as Agent Carter. Rest in peace, Agent Carter television series. Bring it back. Come on, Marvel. But my number 1 is Captain America, the Winter Soldier. This, for me, is the MCU's Dark Knight, in the sense that we have a film that doesn't feel like a superhero film. It feels like a political drama. It feels like a film with dramatic weight. It feels like a film with a capital F, kind of an upper echelon film. And it's the closest I think the MCU has gotten to a film of really high caliber filmmaking and direction and writing and nuance and thematic work and stuff like that. And like many of you have already said, with the addition of Robert Redford, it lends to the political spy thriller aspect of the show. Also, it is a massive, I would say, historical turning point in the MCU, because S.H.I.E.L.D. is no longer what S.H.I.E.L.D. used to be. This whole time, what we thought S.H.I.E.L.D. was is not. Hydra has infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D., and it has reverberations throughout the MCU, which I thought was extremely important. It also changed the MCU going forward. So it's, yet again, these Captain America films are almost like these kind of intermediate or medium-sized Avenger films when it comes to importance in the overall MCU timeline and timeline of events. So it is my number 1. I just really love everything about it. The filmmaking is top-notch. The Russo brothers coming out of nowhere from doing television episodes now to doing giant, big-budget superhero films is really kind of unprecedented in terms of making that type of artistic jump.
Yeah, you really capped off all the panel's talk on Captain America, Winter Soldier, Andrew. You really did a great job there. Billy, what is your number 1?
Okay, I'm gonna first sound like a dick, because earlier you said Janet Van Dyne, it's Hope Van Dyne, and I don't think it's a Sentinel, because Sentinels are with Fox. But my number 1 will always remain the same, and that is Marvel's The Avengers. Nothing will ever top that. I mean, you built from Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, Captain America, and then you finally culminate all of that into I said it before, the simplest stories make the best films. And this is a very, very simple story. Basically, asshole wants to take over the world. They go with it. And you get that awesome 360 shot of everyone. I mean, that at that point we didn't really care about Hawkeye, but still he had his moments. He had his moments, and so did Black Widow. Because also we need a woman on the team. I mean, yeah, there was a great tease of Thanos at the end. I mean, I didn't know who he was at first, but I did some research and I'm like, whoa, this is huge. And I mean, I can name tons of moments. There's really only one negative I can talk about this film, and I'm not really going to talk about that because, I mean, I love this film too much, really, and I can overlook it. But yeah, Marvel's The Avengers will always be my number one, and I kick myself every day for not having seen it in theaters.
Yeah. Well, I mean, going back to what you said, I was thinking about, I remember Janet Van Dyne was the Wasp in the comics, and I thought to myself, is that really her name in the movie? I couldn't remember. So thanks for the help there, Billy. Appreciate that. Steven's very good at that sometimes as well. All right, Steven, what is your number one?
Maybe if I'm correct, maybe it's a celestial. Is that what it's called? A celestial's head?
Yeah, a celestial.
Yeah, that's it. You're welcome, Dan. So back when you were saying, you saying I give you a look about not having Guardians on your list. Well, I'm feeling like I'm going to get a look here because as much as I love this movie, I felt like I wanted to put Captain America First Avenger on my list. So I had to take Civil War off my list. And I know it's fantastic. It's awesome. Got some great scenes. It's got Spider-Man in it. But ultimately, I like the other two Captain America movies more. I look at that third one as it's a great trilogy, and it's one of the best trilogies. But it's that one had to come off my list. I had to. So my number one is The Avengers. Like Billy, hard not to get. You can't get better than that movie. I mean, yes, some of the solo films are good. Like Winter Soldier is probably my favorite solo film. But as a team film, if you include like Guardians, this is still, to me, has some of the best moments that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has ever produced. All the Hulk moments when they're fighting in that last 30 minutes of the movie, which is a huge action set piece in New York. You got Hulk smash, goes around just killing everything, and he throws Loki around like a rag doll. And I was in the theater. I used to work at a movie theater, so I was in the theater when people were watching this, and I got to see it over and over again. People just laughing out loud, cheering. It's the best moment. It's what cinema is about. It's the pure cinema stuff like that is the reason we like going to the theater, seeing people getting involved with the screen. Don't go in there, stuff like that. Like that's the stuff I experienced watching, and that's why I still love it so much. And to be able to have all these characters have the chemistry that they had, even though they had not been on screen together before, is amazing. And that's all Joss Whedon being able to bring all these people together to do that. And he, even though his second Avengers movie was not that great, it was okay. He should not be faulted. It was a tough thing to do to try to do something better than he did, because it's, to me, the best MCU movie. So I always love him for making this movie. And Avengers, if you're like one or two people in the world, you need to see it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I honestly wouldn't. If there's people out there that have not seen the Avengers, what the hell are you doing? I'll tell you what, guys. I mean, Captain America has had a journey in this thing, and it started off with Iron Man, and it didn't start with Cap. Cap wasn't like the focal point of this kind of thing. It started off with Iron Man. They did Captain America's first movie, solo movie, and it was kind of like lukewarm. I mean, a lot of people liked it, but not everybody liked it. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And then you go to the Winter Soldier. And of course, I can't say anything that we haven't already said. It's considered one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. And it does this whole spy thriller kind of thing that I don't think we've seen in any comic book movie before. But then you take it to the next level. You take it to where you have all of these characters fighting over whether or not they should be governed by the government or not governed by the government. Should their secret identities be in the hands of corrupt politicians and corrupt people that are all about money and about themselves and not about the country? And so we have all of these guys, Cap and Iron Man, going head to head. Captain America, Civil War, I feel, is by far the best Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. You have subplots involving Peter Parker, Spider-Man, Tom Holland. Those scenes were phenomenal with Spider-Man, you know, and Robert Downey Jr. in his bedroom talking to him. And then you have this whole other subplot involving Wakanda and Chadwick Boseman and the Black Panther. That is probably one of my favorite parts of the entire movie. And then you have the whole main story of the movie, which I just talked about. And it all culminates in probably one of the greatest action scenes in movie history. I will go there. I will go there. I think it's one of the greatest action scenes in movie history. And to have all the scenes where everybody gets their moment in that scene. Hawkeye and Ant-Man and Scarlet Witch, and everybody gets their crazy. I remember that scene, and I remember that scene. Do you remember that? Remember when he did this and she did that, and so forth and so on? That's what makes that movie so great. You have all those other things, Spider-Man and Black Panther, but then all these guys coming together and fighting in that giant scene. And of course, the end sequence where some of the most craziest revelations in all the Marvel movies, it got revealed what happened with Tony Stark's father and mother, and why some of this stuff happened. And it's like glue. It like stuck the whole thing together in a way that I don't think anybody saw coming. And that's what makes Captain America: Civil War my number one film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It had just so much going on and so many great scenes. And once again, you have the Russo brothers. This is their second movie, and of course, we know they're going to be doing Infinity War Part 1 and 2. I know they're not going to be called Infinity War Part 1 and 2, but I love this film. I still love this film to this day. I'm hoping that Marvel makes more films that surpasses, so I have something like Infinity War or whatever that can go ahead of this, so I could talk about those great films in the future. But I just want to say thank you to my panel. Andrew, where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at Capzilla06 and my YouTube channel on YouTube called Capzilla Productions.
Billy?
Yeah, you can find me at Billy Pollahan, Pollihan. You can find me on Twitter at BBusterBill, all caps, Instagram, Billy Pollahan, Snapchat, Billy Pollahan. And yeah, if you ever want to go to the Screen Junkies fans, I'm an admin of the group, and just come in and talk movies, and yeah, just have a good time.
Steven?
You can find me on Facebook personally at Stephen Billings. I run a YouTube channel called Film Club Central. We have Not Another Geek podcast, Film Club movie show, a whole bunch of shows, and we're on Twitter and Instagram and all that other social media stuff that personally I don't care about.
And you can find me at Dan Skipbound on Facebook, Instagram. Yes, I got my Instagram account back, and I'm working my way back to where it was before. Man, that still bothers me to this day. Pinterest and Twitter, and you can go to Facebook or thebestdamnmovieshow.com, and you can listen to the latest episode of the Best Damn Movie Show, episode 50. We thought it was going to be a bigger episode than it was. Ended up being a interview with the sister from the Perrin family from The Conjuring, an hour-long conversation with her. Andrea, her name is. Go on there and listen to the podcast. Do me and my co-host Vinny a favor and like it or comment. Let us know what you think. If you think what we're talking about is right. We did not do an episode this past week from various things that came out. We're going to be back, and episode 50 will be this coming week. I got a lot of movie reviews, so you get to hear my reviews of Doctor Strange and everything else I saw. And I just want to say thanks again. I mean, this has been, if you going to Andrew and Steven, these guys, we've been talking about doing this episode from the very beginning of the Top 5 Weekly. I had such excitement about doing the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I'm glad everybody brought such great insights into it, and that's what I love about doing the show. These guys, the people that I get on the show, aren't just movie fans. They're knowledgeable about what they're talking about. They talk about the names of the characters and the actors, and they work to be huge movie people like I do. So if you're watching this episode, tell everybody out there, your friends, your family, if they like movies and they want to hear a lighthearted show about movies, some guys that enjoy talking about movies and various people each week, new people sometimes, go watch the Top 5 Weekly. All right, I just want to say thanks again, and we will talk to you next week. We're going to be doing Alien Invasion film because Arrival comes out next week, and I'll be seeing it on Wednesday. So Billy already saw it. Maybe we should get Billy back next week to talk Alien Invasion films. What do you think, Billy?
Totally.
All right. Well, everybody have a good night.
Take the Power Stone. You won't die.